Hello, everybody. Welcome to Chapter 12. This chapter actually focuses just on the economy. We're going to talk about the economy in general, and then we'll talk about the economy of different parts of the country during this pre-Civil War time period. All right, so there's really 7 things that help to shape the economy, and usually if there's a problem in one of these areas or more than one of these areas, you start to see the overall economy struggle, and you can kind of pinpoint where those problems are and hopefully fix them in these categories as well. So these could be useful for you guys as you're thinking of like voting in the future and other issues. You might use some of this information to help you then, but also help us analyze history as well. There are 7 factors that we're going to talk about. The first one's the labor force, then natural resources, equipment and tools, transportation, money and credit, demand, and profit. I'm not going to stop for you guys to take notes, so if you want to pause, that would be great. All right, so labor force is all of the men, women, and children available to work. This does include children. Yes, I know. I think you think you're slaves, but you are a part of the labor force potentially. This, especially about 80 years ago, was true with children. Children were a large percentage of the workforce up until fairly recently. If you have too small of a labor force, you end up having industries that aren't producing it at maximum that they could. You're producing less products. There's not the ability to do all the things that you would like to in your economy. But if you have too much of a labor force, you have unemployment, which means you have people that are draining from the economy without actually inputting anything. Here's Rosie the Riveter. If you don't know who that is, shame on you. Just kidding. We'll get to that. But she's a tough lady. All right, so natural resources are the things that are available and useful for you to use. These are things that occur naturally in nature. This would include things like lumber, coal, oil, gold, that kind of stuff. We need natural resources for basically everything. To grow food, for example, you need several natural resources. Farmland is a natural resource. You need seeds to plant. You might need fertilizer. Those are some of the things you would need just to grow food, right? But then to make other things, like to make nails, for example, you need iron, but you also need coal to smelt the iron with. You need, a wood, for example, to make the hammers that you're going to use to make the nails and things like that. Without the natural resources that you need, your economy is going to suffer because you won't have the ability to produce as much as you could. Here's some pictures of natural resources. To make products, you also have to have the right equipment and tools. Some products, if you don't have the right tools, then there's no way you can make them. For example, I will use nails again. You need to not just have the materials to make nails, but you also need to have anvils and hammer and tongs. Kind of an interesting thing about nails, they're actually how we've traced Vikings to North America. Native Americans didn't have nails. And so there were some settlements found in Canada that had nails in them. And that's how we could trace that it was actually Vikings that did that and not Native Americans, which is kind of cool. But the Native Americans didn't have the tools they needed to make those nails. It's weird to think about a world without nails. Just think about it for a second. Anyway, to produce food, you need a lot of other stuff too. Nowadays, you would need like a tractor of some sort. In the past, you might want a draft animal, different types of equipment, and that makes it a lot easier to farm and you produce a lot more. All right, transportation. This involves not only moving the natural resources that you need to make the stuff that you're going to make, but it also involves moving your finished product. So if we are building something, or chances are we're not going to be right on top of the natural resource that we need. We're going to have to transport that natural resource to our factory. And then when we produce that, chances are we're not right where we're going to sell it. So there's going to be transportation involved on both sides of this. If there's a transportation problem, the economy is going to suffer. Here's some examples of transportation from past to present. Trucks are huge, guys. Semi-trucks, without semi-trucks, the economy would be bad. Bad. Money and credit's also important. This not only means that consumers can buy stuff, but it also means that businesses can expand and increase their production. Um, think about a few things for a second. Like, for example, without access to credit, how are you going to buy a car? How many of you guys have $20,000 laying around? I can tell you I don't, right? So in order to buy a car, you need access to credit. And if nobody can access credit, then the car factories stop producing as many cars, and then they have to lay off workers, and that creates a problem for other companies that those workers used to spend money at, right? So having access to credit is important for consumers, but it's also really important for businesses. If a new business wants to start, for example, most people don't have the cash laying around they need to build a factory, so they need to get that from a bank. If banks don't have money to lend out, then that's going to cause a problem in your economy. Credit is a really interesting thing. You guys will hopefully learn more about this in high school when you have a financial management type class. But credit is basically how much a bank trusts you. If you have good credit, that means you've paid your debts, you've paid back your bills on time, you haven't, you know, defaulted on anything, you haven't stopped paying on any loans or anything like that, then the bank can trust you. As an 18-year-old kid, when you first start getting credit, the banks can't trust you because you're a dumb 18-year-old kid. It's just how it is. So just keep that in mind. I would suggest you just get a credit card and spend $20 or $30 a month on it and pay it off right away. That'll help you build credit. Just random advice for you. And here's a picture of money. I don't even know where this money's from. Looks Russian. I don't know. All right, and then demand, you probably have heard of this one quite a bit. Demand is how much people want to buy something. So this is the desire of the people to buy a product or service from you. If a lot of people want to buy something and there's not enough of that thing, then we have a shortage, right? There's a product shortage. The reverse can also become a problem, though. If there's too much of a product and not very many people want to buy it, then you tend to have you have to lower your price to get people to buy that. That's why you see stuff on the clearance shelf at Walmart, right? They thought people were going to buy thousands of this thing for $3, but they have to lower the price because nobody bought it until it's like $1. Then somebody will be happy to buy it, right? That's how the clearance works. They made too much of that thing. So demand, you've got to find the right balance. If there's more people want a product than you're producing, then you need to start producing more of that product. But if you produce too much, then you could have a problem as well. Here's people fighting over TVs on Black Friday. You're welcome. All right, and then profit is the amount of money that you make. A lot of times people get this really confused when they go to the store. You think, or even like for a restaurant, for example, I like to use pizza as an example, not just because I'm chubby, but because I know pizza. But when you go to Domino's, for example, you spend $10 on a pizza, right? And a lot of people think, oh man, Domino's is ripping me off. They're charging me $10 for a pizza. They made $10 off of this. And that's not true at all, because by the time they add up all the costs that it takes them to make that pizza, right? They have to have dough, they have to have pizza sauce, they have to have cheese. And that doesn't even include having to have a building, having to pay for the ovens to run, electricity, paying employees to make that stuff, the refrigerators running those, right? There's a lot of costs that go into actually making that pizza. By the time they give you your $10 pizza, they've only made $1, right? So that's the difference between what we think of as what companies make and what they actually make, right? Profit is what they actually make. So after you minus out all the costs, how much is left over? So that's profit. So basically you could look at the sales price minus the cost would be your profit. If you can't sell a product to make a profit, then you can't be in that business, right? Unless you are wanting to give away money. But if you need to be able to make a profit in order to make it worth it. So having a balance between the demand, how much people are willing to buy that thing, and having a balance between how much it costs you to produce it, and figuring out that to make sure that you can actually make a profit and your consumers are still happy paying the price that you're asking for is important for the economy. Random street signs. They're not street signs. Just telling you about business principles. So basically, the first 5 things that we talked about are costs that are associated with things. So labor costs money for businesses. Natural resources cost money, right? Transportation costs money. These are some of the things that all factor into the cost of a product. And then our last 2 are supply and demand, right? So they factor in very heavily with each other. If there's too much supply, for the demand, then you lower your price, right? But if there's too much demand for the supply, then you can actually raise your price. So the price goes up and down based off of these 2 things very heavily. All right, and that is it for today. I know there was a lot we talked about in a pretty quick amount of time. Make sure you guys are doing your homework. It does help you on your tests, I promise. All right, I hope you guys have a fantastic day.